Just came across some really good writing talking about the military-industrial complex and how the subtle forces are um, sort of controlling us in this society. The mechanisms of control, which usually work to maintain a high level of fear among the populace, have produced, despite these admissions of failure, the patriotic citizen plagued by job losses, bankrupt by medical bills foreclosed on his or her house, and worried about the possible terrorist attacks. In this historical vacuum, the patriotic citizen clings to the privilege of being a patriot, or perhaps the double privilege of being white and a patriot. The retreat into a tribal identity is a desperate attempt to maintain self-worth and self-importance at a time of deep personal and ideological confusion. The patriotic citizen, although abused by the actual policies of the state, unfailingly supports widespread surveillance and permanent war. The patriotic citizen does not question the $1 trillion in defense-related spending. The patriotic citizen accepts that the 18 military and civilian intelligence agencies, most of whose work is now outsourced to private corporations, are held above government. The patriotic citizen accepts the state's assertion that it needs more police, prisons, inmates, spies, weapons, mercenaries, and troops than any other industrialized nation. The patriotic citizen objects when anyone suggests that military budgets can be cut, that troops need to come home, that domestic policies need more attention than the pursuit of permanent war. The military-industrial lobbies have ensured that military budgets are untouchable. The patriotic citizen admires the military and somehow pretends that the military is not part of the government. In the name of patriotism, the most powerful instruments of state power and control are effectively removed from public discussion. We endure more state control than any time in U.S. history, and the liberal class, whose task was once to monitor and protest the excesses of the power elite, has assisted in the rout. The failure of the liberal class to articulate an alternative in a time of financial and environmental collapse clears the way for military values of hyper-masculinity, blind obedience, and violence. A confused culture disdains the empathy and compassion espoused by traditional liberalism. This cruelty runs like an electric current through reality television shows, trash talk programs where contestants endure pain and humiliation while they betray and manipulate those around them in a ruthless world of competition. These are the values championed by an increasingly militarized society and the manipulation and dishonesty on Wall Street. Friendship, trust, solidarity, honesty, and compassion are banished for the unadulterated world of competition. This hypermasculinity, the core of pornography, fuses violence and eroticism, as well as the physical and emotional degradation of women. It is the language employed by the corporate state. Human beings are reduced to commodities, corporations which are despotic, authoritarian enclaves devoted to maximizing profit and ensuring that all employees speak from the same prompt cards, have infected the wider society with their values. Hypermasculinity crushes the capacity for moral autonomy, difference, and diversity. It isolates us from one another. It has its logical fruition in the Abu Ghraib prison, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, along with our lack of compassion for our homeless, our poor, mentally ill, unemployed, sick, our gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual citizens. This is the antithesis of liberalism. In his two-volume 1987 study entitled Male Fantasies, which draws on the bitter alienation of the demobilized veterans in Germany following the end of World War I, Klaus Tylowat argues that a militarized culture attacks all that is culturally defined as the feminine, including love, gentleness, compassion, and acceptance of difference. It sees any sexual ambiguity as a threat to male hardness and the clearly defined roles required by the militarized state. The elevation of military values as the highest good sustains the perverted ethic, rigid social roles, and emotional numbness that Twilight explored. It is the moral cancer that the liberal class once struggled against. The collapse of liberalism permits the hyper-masculinity of a militarized culture to redefine the nation. Sexual metaphors of abuse and rape are used to justify imperial and military power. And once the remnants of the liberal class adopt the heartless language of sexual violence, they assent, consciously or not, to the rule of corporate greed and violence.